Natalia Molebatsi is an internationally acclaimed poet and writer who has performed her poetry in South Africa, Senegal, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Italy, Holland, Azerbaijan, among others. And she's performed with, among others, Alice Walker, Maya Angelou, Tunokwe, Lebo Mashile, Sipot Sticks. The list goes on and on and on, and I'll be mentioning some of the names later on. They'll be coming up in our conversation. The renowned wordsmith is here today to share with us her journey in poetry. Well, the last thing you think is that poetry can take you around the world to the extent that it has done. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
So just by talking, you end up in all of those countries?
Just by talking. It's also just sharing experiences. So the experiences are carried in words. And I feel that I am privileged to have that kind of cultural agency to take my stories, but also the other examples that I see in my environment. And yes, poetry, art can make you travel the world, but physically, but also emotionally, and through reading books, because you cannot be a poet or a writer without reading books. So through reading books, I have found myself traveling even before I went to any of these places that you mentioned.
The books took you there.
Absolutely.
But then the spoken word has got some magic about it, right? The way the words are put together, that gives them the strength, the energy that travels far and wide to the extent that you should be invited.
Absolutely, and Africans are magicians. I learned that because I saw my grandmother perform the art of spoken word poetry, even before she never even knew that she was a praise poet or singer. But at every occasion, be it a wedding, somebody's funeral, somebody's mahadi, those spaces, and she would do it so eloquently that I wanted to learn from her. So I got that power of words, that magic, and the way that she was so creative in delivering those words.
You've just transported me to that space, I must tell you. Because suddenly now, something that we forget, and I had forgotten for some time, is that there will be this lady, invariably
There's
an
always that lady.
old woman, who just breaks out into word and waboka.
Yes,
She says all sorts of things, and we just hear people say,
Absolutely.
you know, she's on the money. Now, I wouldn't think that, you know, relatively young people would find that interesting. It was like a holdover from the past, that it might be relevant to the old generations. At least to some of us, it's almost like we're still holding on to their identity and holding on to some memories of the past, because in whatever they would be saying, you know, they would be calling out the names of people who've gone before, and then praising and celebrating the forebears and the nature, culture of whoever the celebrants are.
You see, we never imagined that those grandmothers and grand-aunts would die.
Yes.
And then as we grow older, we realize that we are that generation that who's going to be old.
Exactly, we must take
so
over now.
We take over,
Yeah.
and this is how we keep it alive. In whatever it is, whether it's song or is diboko,
Yes.
tsa rona tsa setho, you have to keep it alive in some way.
Do you know leboko la gago?
Hey, ke setlogolo sa moshidi wa nka re tha ka tsoga basana ba robetse ka sila mabele ya re ba tsoga ke be ke tshola mofokotso. So she's always used that that praise, and it explains how she was just that active person who never had an idle moment.
But where will I find my own story then? I'm sitting
You know
here,
what?
I'm thinking,
It's a
I want to compete, then I don't have anything to go with.
Well, that's another project that we definitely need to get into.
Yes.
There are spaces, very few of them, that have published or that kept audio archives of those diboko, tsa rona as people. And because we never took it so important, that it's so necessary, that it's our cultural agency that we need to keep and pass on. It's language.
Yes.
Language is so important because you realize how mortal
Yes.
we are.
Yes.
And when we start having children and grandchildren, the neighbors' children start to grow, you realize that there is something that has to keep this lineage.
Well, but yours is like serious business now. It's gone beyond your grandmother's imaginations, if I may say so, because you've been nominated for the Mbokoto Award, you give performances, we've already mentioned, throughout the world. You perform in what? In different languages or in English in particular?
I perform in English, and it's not my fault that I was colonized with my people, but I also love our languages. And when somebody asks me, "Hore, wena mukai?" I will say, "Yeah, ke Motswana," even though I love all these languages. So I usually perform in a medley of Xhosa, Sepedi. I love the Sepedi language. And then I pick up words.
But coming from Thembisa, for that matter, you should be able to put it all together, I
and
suppose.
you use that as a power as opposed to that discrediting you in some way. That if I speak your language, it is a kind of currency for me as opposed to it being something that takes away. So not only on the African continent, but wherever I go, whether I'm in Argentina or in Brazil, I want to know, how do you say this? How can I express myself in this way? How do I greet the older people? So for me, I just take that and I put it in my bank of memory.
But putting the stories together, and the question I want to ask is about consciousness. Is that I'm thinking of a person like Maya Angelou, right? It's like people like her, like yourself, you have to have a story to tell. And it's got to be a powerful human story that is compelling enough that people would want to hear it from anywhere in the world and that it will resonate with them, right? The message is never a small time from people like yourself. I'm using Maya Angelou as an example.
She has an incredible story to tell of hardship as well, because we tend to think that the stories to tell or worth telling are just cruising, but they can also be very hard stories.
But for you then?
Well, for me, I grew up in a time, I grew up in the 90s, and in the 80s actually, where for you to stand up in front of people and speak, or to get a microphone and speak into it, big deal. It's a big deal because we never had those chances to speak. And our parents never had those chances. Our grandparents, I mean, what you said could put you in jail, could kill you. So for us to have the space where you could say what you felt like saying is a very important thing. But also you realize that people died for what they thought. People died for their voices. So the stories that you tell have to be, as you say, compelling. They have to be that authentic kind of voice, because it's no joke.
There must be a story to tell about those people.
Yes, and that is why we tell. That is why we create poems and we tell stories.
I want the story of those wanted to tell the story, but could not tell the story as you see it, and you wrote into a poem. If you can just give me a flavor of it.
Well, I probably would talk about old women. Some of the stories, remember,
You take your pick.
I would say just an excerpt, for example, from a poem called Journey People. Hey, Journey Woman, what are your foundations? Because I am searching for my formulations. I am searching for my formulations. I'm searching for my formation. And if any of you, traveler, warrior, journey women, ever get to that other side, tell them that we too were made of flesh and blues. Tell them, traveler Johnny, warrior woman, that we too were crafted into flesh and blues, into flesh and long tapestries who held us up when we couldn't uphold ourselves.
I wish I could put music to that as well.
I put music to
You
it
do?
too. Yes,
Yeah,
it's important. The two don't have a barrier. We've
Yes.
put
Yes.
barriers between music and poetry and visual arts.
Yes.
And I'll tell you that people like Natalia Molebatsi,
Yeah.
who, when he performs on stage, he's got a band performing with him. And there's a visual artist painting
Sure.
on stage.
Well, and my regards to him when you next see him. So good friend.
It was just an example.
Yeah, but when you next say hi to him, because
I will.
anyway, I was also reminded. I mentioned Maya Angelou and thinking, I know why the caged bird sings.
And you will hear the music behind
Exactly.
her as she performs.
Exactly, and of course, I know you appear all over the place, and good luck. Yes.
Can I mention that I will be on Sunday,
Yes.
the 20th of March,
That's right.
performing poetry with a jazz band at the Newtown Junction Mall. The event, it's a series of events where we'll be performing also later with Mabeto Bejane and Themba Mokoena.
Yeah.
It's called the Junction Sundays.
That's on the 20th of March, this Sunday, at the Junction Newtown in Joburg. Natalia Molebatsi, Mabeto Bejane, Themba Mokoena, they will be there having fun. Thank you very much
Well,
for
thank
having
you
been
for
with
having
us.
us.
So
Thank
make
you.
sure you go and enjoy the spoken word together with music on Sunday. From us, good night to you.